We have finally finished the Stormlight Archive. We finished Wind and Truth.
This is it.
Yep. What a book to review. I'm very interested to see what Jaden has to say about it. I have not talked to him at all about what he thinks about the book. We were waiting for you guys to
That's
get
what
this.
this podcast, this show is all about, the reactions, and we have a lot of fun talking about it. So I'm excited. There are some key elements that I have been patiently waiting to share. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so in this podcast, this episode, we're going to be going through most of the characters, what we thought on all the biggest scenes of the book, and of course, the finale, the Sanderlanche, on how it went.
I almost feel like we need to turn this into a review of the entire Stormlight Archive, but maybe there'll be a future video, because there's so much stuff we want to talk about in just Wind and Truth.
Because
keep an eye out, subscribe if you haven't yet. That's super important. Like the video. Is there anything else? Comment. I don't know whether they would comment yet, but
yeah, you got to do it.
You'll think about a comment for the next 10 minutes.
Well, and that's where I want to start too, because I want to say, how did you feel about the book? And it's interesting that you say the whole Stormlight Archive, because first thing I thought when I read this, it changes your entire perspective on the Stormlight Archive. And whether that's for good or bad, yet to be determined, but it did influence it on me.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. It kind of makes you think about some other things. It almost would set you up for more of a reread. Not that I know if I could commit to a Stormlight Archive third reread, but it is kind of cool because some of the elements you haven't really thought as deeply about that make you think more deeply.
Is this
kind
of
spoilery?
Yes, just so you know, full spoilers ahead.
Yes.
From part 7 going forward through the end of the book. So if you have not read that yet,
this is your warning.
This is your warning.
Yep.
But Jaden, is that little hint of how you feel when you say that I don't know if I would do a full reread of this series?
It's a lot, and we just did one this past year, so I think I'm going to need a little bit of a break. Just like when my wife and I are watching a new series, like, has it been long enough for us to restart this series again? Sometimes it hasn't. So.
Okay, cool. So how did you feel about the book? What are you thinking overall?
Okay, overall, I'm not giving my final numerical review because that comes at the end. You guys know this.
Yep.
But
I'm so excited to hear
vibes,
what you say.
I was a little bit let down from the massive hype that I built up for the book. Hype was crazy. We went to Dragonsteel. Those videos were absolutely fantastic and fun. The event was exciting. There was so much going on. And then like diving into this book almost felt like that, that dessert after Dragonsteel, the convention. And I was so pumped and so excited for it. So we've already made our first 2 parts of this review. And this is the last one. So it's like the Sanderlanche of the last book in the Stormlight Archive is big, grand opus of books. I kind of expected a ton. And I feel like it was a bit meandery of a Sanderlanche. And that's all I'm going to say on that. We have a lot to talk about on specifics. Yes. That's my overall.
Well, and I want to say that, like,
because you didn't ruin your thoughts.
No. I mean, here's the thing: is like I think that the book did fall flat. I'll put it right there.
Ooh, we agree. We don't always agree on that.
I'll tell you right off. It is probably my least favorite of the Stormlight Archive.
That's what. Well, I was gonna say that at the end.
Yeah, I know. But you felt that way, right?
Oh, my numbers. Spoiler alert, it's going to be lower than any other Stormlight Archive book.
Oh, that's crazy.
It hurts me a little bit.
It does.
Because this is the book, like, we both have numbered release copies. Like, this is what was going to be the thing. They're both signed. I know. Sorry, I'll let you continue.
No,
it's part of it for me.
I agree with you. And it's crazy because you were talking about how I don't know if it's the build-up and how we were so excited about the book. And I kind of wonder about a lot of the internet. I saw a lot of people ripping this book on the internet. I haven't watched any of the reviews yet because I wanted to stay unspoiled.
It was while we were reading it that those were popping up.
Just like all the thumbnails.
Slower than everybody else.
Yeah, I know, right? But all the thumbnails were popping up and just saying like,
looking good.
Like super disappointed, like we are so mad. Like what was that to ramble?
What our thumbnails gonna look like?
I don't know.
Maybe they're coming as being like, that was you guys.
Yeah, you're one of them. No, it felt like the internet was disappointed. But is it the hype? I don't think so. Because I would say I have read the Mistborn Era 1 twice. Okay. Mistborn Era 1, that book 3 finishes so strong.
Yeah.
It is incredible Sanderlanche. It builds up for the hype that you need for a book 3. And when you reread it again, you still love it. I still love the ending. I'm still like wanting to read the next page. And I can tell you right now that's not going to happen with this book.
I agree with you on that front. I do.
Yeah.
Truly. I think on your hype comment, though, the only thing I want to say before we dive into more specifics on the book is the fact that it just got released. So the people that are reacting are the people that were the hypiest.
That is true.
Because they're the ones that read it first. They go to the launch. They go to Barnes & Noble.
Are we included in that group?
Yeah, we're hypey.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that might influence the excitement, the anticipation for all that stuff. So that's all I will say. But I have some excited things that I want to talk about. We talked. I showed you this just before we started recording. Or maybe did I not show you the picture? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. But the Google review average for this book is 3.1.
Wow. Did you look at the other averages for the other books?
I can show you. I have the picture here, but it's I'll show you again. It's a reminder. Maybe I didn't show you then.
So are you telling me that the internet also thought that this book was not near as good as the others?
The internet was a smidge disappointed.
A 3.1 is pretty low.
Yeah, so it's 4.5 on Goodreads.
Okay.
But
I think his other books on Goodreads
Google
was about 4.7.
Yeah. The best one is 4.7. Not all of them are 4.7. Some of them are 3.3s and 3.4. 4.4s and 4.3s.
Yeah.
But
are you serious?
Yeah.
This is higher than some of the other ones?
Again, it's a smaller subset of people that haven't had the chance to read it yet. So
interesting. I'd be interested to see what you're saying here with Goodreads.
I will find it in a second. But yeah, do you want to say anything else about reviews overall? Like how reading reviews? I know you had mentioned a lot of things over the last couple of weeks about reading reviews.
Well, yeah, so the Goodreads thing, I just want to see this. So, what are they? Read them out.
Way of Kings, I guess everyone wants to know.
Yes.
Way of Kings is rated a 4.67 with 44,000 reviews. Words of Radiance is a 4.76 with 413,000 ratings. Oathbringer, 4.62, right in between, 296,000. Rhythm of War 4.61 and Wind and Truth 4.50.
Is that the lowest?
Yes.
It is. So consensus of the internet is also that it is the lowest book out there.
Actually, Dawnshard is lower.
Honestly, I like Dawnshard better. Hot take?
That is a hot take.
What do you think?
I really liked Dawnshard, but I don't know if I can. I have a hard time comparing like a short story. Felt like Dawnshard was a short story to like a massive novel.
It's true, but here I want to get into this before we get.
It's like comparing like an Instagram reel to a movie, being like, which one did you like better? Like, well, okay, they're in very different circumstances.
Honestly, like the proportions are probably similar.
It feels that way. So it's like, which one did you like better? I'm like, well, my liking of something is always going to be relative to my expectations of that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there are some dinners that I really, really like eating. I would not choose any of them over ice cream. Like, it's just not going to be a
but for
fair
me,
comparison.
It was just like pure story. So this is the problem that I had with Wind and Truth, and I think this is a good place to go.
We're getting all the negatives out right at the beginning.
Well, it's not all of the negative. It's just maybe it's all of them. But there are things that I liked with this book. So I will tell you, I didn't hate everything, and I shouldn't even use the word hate because I didn't like hate the book. Like I just didn't like every. Anyways, one of the biggest things for me was that this book did not let you settle into it at all. Like the problem with the thing that I really liked about Dawnshard and all of his other books is you're able to really get a story and you're able to like just settle in and really love the characters. This book I just felt like I couldn't really settle into the story. It was just, I don't know, it just didn't really feel right.
I wouldn't say it was because of like the quick, I know you're probably thinking it's because he cuts back and forth between different perspectives. He's always done that. What I think was different about this one is there were those little moments that are like pull you out of the story. And then you're like...
I will tell you, he cut out of scenes more than he has in any other book in this.
You sure?
I am sure, and I hated it.
Because I commented on that in, I think, books 1 and 2.
You did.
How that really affected me.
You did. Books 1 and 2 didn't bother me one bit. This book, it drove me absolutely crazy. I promise you... This is what makes this book an entire star lower for me. Whew. It is crazy how badly this affected me.
It's so awful that he's going back to star ratings, which we do not like.
Nah, it's at 10 stars.
10 stars.
But here's the thing. Did you not feel the same way? That I could not settle in and enjoy any one of the single character's perspectives. Because they were jumping out of it so often in the book. I'm like, just let me finish this part.
I feel like we didn't get an extended length Kaladin and Szeth
never
section.
You never got that unless it went back to his history, Szeth's history with his
But
homeland.
I consider those different perspectives.
Exactly, but you were able to enjoy those stories because you got an entire chapter of just Szeth. But then the other chapters,
there was a lot of mid-chapter jumps.
They were jumping through 4 or 5 different perspectives.
That's a good point.
I almost wish that he had just like, and I know he's trying to show what's going on at the same time. I don't care if you jump back a little bit. Honestly, do the entire day of one perspective at a time, then jump back to what was going on with the other character at the same time.
It is just one day.
You know, like I don't know. That would have made me enjoy it so much more. It was to the point where I expected the jumps. Yeah. I knew I would not be able to find out anything interesting until it came back from a jump.
I was predicting some jumps. I was as well.
Yeah.
You're like, right before this fight, we're going to jump to a new perspective.
It was so annoying. And I was like, now I won't be able to know what's going on because I'm going to have to wait 30 minutes before I get back to this because I'm going to have to do other things. And it really turned me off to the book. That was the biggest part for me on why I had hard problems with this book.
Huh. You know what would be a sweet transition? What was your favorite part of this book? And it's like your favorite concept from this book. And I want to talk about mine first. And then I do want to go deeper into Kaladin and Szeth. I think my favorite part of this book is I think there were some excellently written fight scenes. I'm thinking of a couple in particular that I really liked.
List them off.
Some fight scenes that I really didn't like. So I'm going to set those aside for now.
No, list them all off, then we'll go into them later.
Okay, so obviously I really liked the fight between when Talon started to fight. I thought that was awesome. Zigel and Lift was incredibly exciting and
Talon's
fun.
very sweet fight scene.
That was so well written. I specifically paused the book to write that down. So that was really cool. And then a couple that I didn't like as well. But I want to talk about that when we get into more of the Heralds.
What was the other one that you liked? With
I really liked. No, it was Zigel and Lift.
Oh,
I think that was a really fun one.
Yeah.
And then a couple of Szeth's fights. But I think we've talked about them in previous videos. So we're not going to go too in depth. Because this is specifically days 7 through 10. And I have to keep reminding myself of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's start with Kaladin and Szeth, though. So I would like to start there. So it went through a lot of crazy things. Craziest part for me, of course, was the ending when Szeth is able to go through and do the whole Heralds thing. What did you think about
runs
that?
The gauntlet. Yeah.
Yeah. We got our fight. We got the fight that we were wanting of like, okay, there's all the different surges involved and everything. And I think he's able, is he able to...
Hold on. When did we get that fight? Tell me specifically when we got that fight, because I was waiting for that fight and I never got it.
He fights all of the people holding the Herald swords at the same time.
Yeah, and they just punch and kick him on the ground most of the time.
I thought
that's the whole fight.
I thought that he grabs Nightblood, and then Nightblood's like, hey, I figured out everyone's surges, and so you can start using them too. And so he was sliding across and around. Did I read that wrong? Or
parts like that were incredibly brief in that fight. Most of that fight was him just taking punches and Kaladin trying to do weird stuff.
So you were not a fan of this part either.
That fight was a very low point for me.
Yes.
Because I was like, this is the grand finale of like how these surges intertwine and stuff, and it's really just like he's curled up on the ground and they're just kicking him over and over again. It just felt ridiculous.
Yeah, it did feel ridiculous.
So that was not one for me. Absolutely not. But I do think there were some other fight scenes that were really fun.
Okay.
That one let me down.
Well, tell me what you thought about the Kaladin and Szeth stuff.
So Kaladin and Szeth, I liked their journey. I liked their back and forth. I thought it was interesting. I hate going like, oh, I like this, but I liked their back and forth, but I feel like the whole mental health thing that Kaladin did with Szeth was interesting because it was helping him think about things and think about concepts in different ways. Like, well, maybe it's this, maybe logic doesn't always work, or maybe there's this case. But then he just tried to like copy paste that.
Yeah,
to like 4 other people.
Nail and
I'm like, it just feels so contrived, and it just doesn't feel like Kaladin. I don't know, and I can understand that everyone goes through growth and development. I'm not saying he has to be one specific person, but it just felt so different than who he is.
He does this with Nail and Ashar, but I don't know why Nail turns into a complete wimp afterwards.
So
like,
lame.
It bothered me so much because Nail seemed like this super cool, like strong character. And then all of a sudden, like he sings a song for him, and then he's like,
"It's all over, man.
It's it. That's it." Yeah. He's like, I'm a horrible person and everything. Which I
We're talking about thousands of years
what
of
they're
trauma.
doing. I know, but like it just didn't hit right. Like it just didn't feel right.
And that's fair. Like we have to go off of what our impressions were overall. And the impression of that was just, it was hard. It was hard to read that and be like, well, yeah, he's kind of lame now. He's just not fun to... The Heralds are supposed to be these like really exciting, really awesome. I was pretty disappointed.
I was waiting for Kaladin to get up and start fighting at some point. We never got another Kaladin fight scene this entire book.
Not really. I mean, he did go in and help with a couple of...
And he fought against Nail, I guess, too. But even then, that one like was
The fight
fine.
against Nail was terrible. That was another terrible one.
You didn't like that?
Well, he got whooped, first of all. And then you realize that the Heralds have an extra special ability that means like he never really had a shot anyway, even as a superhuman. So, and then like the wind's like, oh, maybe you might have a shot. This is your best chance. And like, who are you? You don't even know anything. Anyway, that was tough. Yeah, the Kaladin and Szeth let me down because Kaladin's obviously my favorite character. I really like Szeth as well. I think his storyline is really cool. He did a much better job of staying to his character, staying true to like his character, his confusion, his moral, misunderstanding. That was interesting. And I think his storyline mixed with what Kaladin was trying to do to help him made sense up until the very end, when I feel like all these stories converged into, this is how this needs to end, so we'll just kind of move everybody around so that it works.
Yeah, it felt really forced.
They're like, this is how I want it to end, and we'll just kind of draw the lines to get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and honestly, I was expecting a way bigger ending with this, because the wind kept on saying, yeah, what you're doing here is way more important than what's going on at Urithiru. And by the end of the book, I did not feel that way.
Turns out it's not.
Still felt like Urithiru was more important.
Oh my goodness.
Even the stuff that was
well,
even the Wind and Truth, like history stuff was saying like, yeah, looking back, it was more important what Kaladin did and stuff. I'm like, yes, I get it, like in the grand scheme of things, but it still felt more important what happened at Urithiru.
I'm not even sure it is. I'm still not even sure it is.
The Kaladin thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what are they protecting? A small piece of honor. The Spren.
Yeah.
Right? They have no more Stormlight. So the bonds with the Spren, unless you have a Shardblade, does nothing.
Yep.
So,
but they're going to address that, though.
I'm just saying they left it in a place where you're like, well, that's a bit of a letdown.
Because we've seen like hints at the future. I won't go into spoilers of other books, but like they have bonds with Spren and they can still use their powers in some way. Is that a huge spoiler?
I don't think it's a huge spoiler, but I would disagree. So maybe it's not a spoiler because we can't even agree on it. But anyway, we can move it. After we stop recording, we will finish this conversation with you about it. Yeah, maybe that'll be a separate short. But anyway, I do think that was something to note.
Yes. Well, the thing that was the best part of the Kaladin stuff is clearly him becoming a herald at the end.
Yes, that was pretty cool.
Very cool. Actually, now's the part where it started feeling like, okay, this is feeling good. This is feeling like right.
It has future potential.
Yeah. And Kaladin did not die. Don't know what that means for the Tudor Ramble guys, but I'm very interested.
Oh, that's a good point.
Or are they going to like split it and say, yes, he did die, but he didn't,
Ooh,
interesting.
That's going to be really tricky for that bet.
I know.
I'm excited for that video.
But I thought that was a cool ending of him deciding to become a herald. I think it fits really well.
Makes sense. Absolutely.
Better than Szeth being a herald.
I completely agree. I think that was a good ending.
I really liked that one. Now to my favorite part of the book, Adolin. Jaden, what did you think about the Adolin part? Was it your favorite part of the book as well?
Overall, I think, yeah.
Okay.
I think it was really cool.
I thought for sure you were not going to say that with the look on your face.
Well, I was focusing on this section, and I'm thinking all the way back across the book. I do think his story was phenomenal. I think it was really cool that he worked with... I think the kind of reveal of like Maya coming back with the other Deadeye was a little bit underwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just made it sound like it was going to be this massive thing that's going to turn the tides, and it really felt a little bit more like, I found you some shard blades.
Yeah.
And like, that's super awesome, but not what I was envisioning. I was envisioning she was going to like bring an Unmade or something. It was going to be like something wild.
Wow, that would be
absolutely go nuts.
I actually loved it, the way that it turned out. Really? I thought it was really cool. I thought it was inspiring and exciting, and I was like, oh, sweet. They just like all became like this new group of Unoathed. This is what they're being called now. The Unoathed. Did you catch that?
No, I did catch it.
You look like confused. I was like...
I caught it, but I struggled a little bit to be like, this is literally always how it worked, before any of this Radiant stuff, the Dead Eyes were the swords.
Oh, no.
That's kind of how it happened before.
This is new, though, because
they just don't need a gem.
They can summon the Shardblade now.
Yeah, which they used to do.
No, they had to put it on physically. Or not, Shardplate. Shardplate.
Okay. Sorry. Like the Shard Blades for sure.
Yeah. No.
Can anyone do Shardplate besides Adolin?
All of them can.
Really?
Yeah, all of them can do
cool.
plate and blade.
I thought it was just
yeah.
Adolin
and so Adolin was able to like reform it to his face, which was really cool. And
that I remember. I can't believe I didn't remember that all the other Unoathed had plate.
Yeah, they had plate and blade, which was really cool.
That
so
cool.
They're starting like a new group of people, the Unoathed.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. I do think that the craziest part, though, of that was when Adolin loses his leg. And
he doesn't get it back.
And he doesn't get it back. And he's never going to get it back. It's clearly not going to happen in this series.
No Stormlight left.
No. And then when he goes in and he has to, he gets his Shardplate blade, and then he's able to get his leg reformed. Like, how cool is that moment?
That was absolutely fantastic. The only rain on that parade is another fight scene that I didn't like. Is his fight scene with, what was the fused name? I don't remember. Holding the throne room.
Yeah.
There were parts of that, and I remember where I was because I remember being disappointed, where he was like obviously struggling because he was missing a foot. And he's been training his whole life, and stance, footwork is literally the most important thing in a fight, as they've drilled into us this whole time, right? It's so incredibly important. If you're fighting a guy who just lost his leg that day, or maybe the day before, they're going to be affected, right?
Is it Abadai the Monarch?
Oh, wow, yeah. That sounds right. But they literally, like, 4 sentences later are like, but he just included it in his stances, and now he's fine, and now he's a full swordsman again. I'm like, what does that even mean? He's just like, oh yeah, he just made up for it. Like, well, how exactly? Did he make up for the fact that he was just using a peg leg now?
Well, he was talking about how he was incorporating the slip and like...
No, a slip is not something you could just incorporate in your stance.
Well,
I think that's ridiculous.
I would argue that he was expert enough to be able to figure out how to make it work, but he still lost in the end.
He was on the offensive after he figured it out. And I was like, I don't think that makes any sense to me. I struggle with you just saying, and he built it into his forms. Like, it just seems so
not
convenient. I don't know. Like, I would have rather him just be straight up losing and not be like, oh, actually there was hope because he just made it work with the slip of his foot. I wish he just straight up lost and then got his plate and then he was okay because it was made up for it.
Classic Sanderson way for him to lose though, by like winning but losing. He shoves his sword through his faceplate and then
he's fine.
Like, he's totally fine.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, he's screwed. Like it's over for Adolin.
That was classic.
Yeah, it was classic. The other classic moment was when Adolin has to fight on the front lines when he's I
liked that part.
Probably the greatest scene in the book besides the Contest of Champions.
It's up there. I don't know if it's that high up there, but it's up
really.
There.
I thought it was so good. I loved that part.
It was really cool to see. He's just a regular soldier, and he's tired, and he's like doesn't want to. Nobody wants to be there. Everyone's just doing it because that's what they have to do.
It just goes the worst experience. It's crazy because he's exhausted, and then he starts fighting. He's like, "I'm going to die here, but I'm going to take down as many people as I can on the way."
Yeah,
and like I thought that was so cool. It's
cool. His motivation is just incredible throughout this whole thing.
Oh, it's so nuts.
And I like because they came across Talon because they were in the same battle, and he comes across Talon. There's this mountain of fused, and he's like completely unarmed, but he's dead, and it's just like, an absolute unit. He just absolutely destroyed all of these fused with no armor, no nothing. Just what do you have, like a spear, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible.
Something like that.
It was cool. That storyline was awesome to me. Just something clicked for him and he just started laying waste to the Voidbringers.
So cool. The other character that we hadn't gotten a perspective from before was Zigel.
Yeah.
And it was interesting getting him. Okay, this is, again, going back to my point. I think he had too many perspectives in this book. It was cool having a Zigel perspective. It was cool having a Yasna perspective and everything. But can you not have cut it down to a few characters, then maybe giving us glimpses every once in a while?
And Renarin flipping back and forth. And I was like, who are we again?
Yeah.
I was really struggling because they have a very similar trajectory throughout most of this book.
Yes.
So when they swap back and forth, I was like, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that was a little rough there too. And then you got you just had a million perspectives. Even Mraize's perspective, and then Shallan's perspective.
Yeah.
And then, like, oh my goodness. It was just too much. I think he did too much switching. He was trying to do too much with the character.
Absolutely.
There. But with Zigel, though, I literally have written in my notes several times, Moash sucks. Yeah. There were very many times where I'm just like, Moash is the absolute worst. Like, he is a terrible human being. Yeah. And there is no redemption for Moash. There could be in the next 5 books, but I don't think so.
Did not go that route.
No, and I don't think there is any in the future either. Like,
because now he seems to be leaning in. He's like, I enjoy this. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah, he's like, I found someone who doesn't take away my pain. I just use my pain to... do what I want. Like,
again,
wow, okay.
Another kind of weird thing where I'm just like, before he's like, I'm so happy to find a god that takes away my pain and I don't have to live it. And then a couple days later, he's like, I'm so happy I found a god that lets me love my pain, like, and just like lean into it and makes me angry.
Yeah, he's traumatized.
I don't know. It was a little rough, but his fight scenes though were crazy with Moash and Zigel and the bridgemen that he's killing. Absolutely heartbreaking. Every single one of those scenes.
And the fact that Zigel right at the end is like breaks his oaths to save his friend from being killed.
Okay, was that also not one of the greatest scenes of the book?
That was insane.
Absolutely crazy, especially for like reasons that we know from other books. Like now we know the reason on why that first bond was broken. Also kind of harsh that his Spren doesn't like him anymore at the end.
No, but the end was very interesting with Zigel and a new Spren. I know. That was cool.
Was that
12124?
Yeah, it's 12124.
Sure. A Skybreaker, yeah. It was.
Yeah, I know he's a Skybreaker, but is
so
it
cool?
What's his name in the other book?
Ox.
Is that Ox?
Yeah.
You think it is?
It's got to be.
That's what I think too. But he doesn't have the accent.
He didn't have the accent when I read the book.
I know, right? I really, really loved the reader of Sunlit Man. He was so good, and that's what I want Ox to sound like. So
that's cool.
Anyways, but I don't know. That's what I was kind of thinking too. I'm like, it's got to be a hint at him becoming. Like,
it was that was how the book ended.
Well, yes.
At least for him.
You don't know,
but it was wild.
He could find another Skybreaker.
No, that'd be lame.
Yeah,
he wouldn't do that to me. I thought that was a good ending. His storyline was cool. There was a lot of broken oaths though at the end, like a lot. Like it seemed to be very convenient out for most people.
It did, but maybe that's the reason why at the end of the book they have like that little end note: trusted words, known words, renounce once, renounce words known, words trusted once. So like
it would be nice if it was didn't have that last word on there.
Some would say. Yeah, I don't know. I read those things and I think that's part of the point is that everyone rejected their oaths, and then they rejected their oaths again, and they did it in the biggest way. Yeah. And it's just crazy. But yeah, I want to hear about your bad fight scenes.
Or your good fight scenes. We got to talk about a lot of them. The good fight scenes, I really liked Lift and Zyle.
Yep.
Sometimes I get mixed up, because then I read it for a little bit, and I start saying it differently. But Zyle was cool, because he's left for dead, basically. He didn't want to give up his breath, because he has a huge amount of breath. To what seemed like a Scadrial person.
Yep, totally seemed like a Scadrial person.
But Lift shows up because she specifically wants to save the chicken, which we know is an AVR. But that was just awesome because she's like, you know what, fine, I'll fight him. And she fights him and she just figures it out. And then Zyle is like, wow, that was incredible. He's like, you just fought a full ferochemist and you're fine. Like all 3 of them are down. He was just really impressive. He said something about like that was the best raw display of talent I've ever seen. Wow. Or display of raw talent I've ever seen.
I remember that. So Sanderson references about this book. He's like, I think I just wrote the greatest fight scene I've ever written. What part is he referencing? I'll be frank with you, I have no idea. There was nothing that stuck out to me. I still think his best scene that he's ever written for fight scene was Adolin and Kaladin in the arena.
There is nothing better. Nothing compares to that.
Yeah, nothing does. Nothing in this book.
No shot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about what he would have thought that would have been. Maybe the 2 honor bearers in Shadesmar was pretty good. Mm-hmm. That was an interesting one. I mean, there's no way it was the final battle with Szeth. Like, that was so incredibly disappointing. We got to roll it back and look and see if we talked about this in the other videos, how excited I was for the final fight.
Yeah, no, you totally talked about this.
I've been excited for it for a while.
Yep.
And I was very let down because it was Szeth just not wanting to fight. Like, I wanted everyone at their peak, everyone fighting at their absolute maximum, and wanted it to be awesome, but it really wasn't.
We were promised some things, like, not explicitly, but, like, implicitly, that we would get some sweet fights, and we never got them. I could have sworn that's where they were going to go, though. That's where they were going to go. Because even at the end, they talked about, like, and I grabbed Nightblood, and he's like, I've been learning the surges from the other swords, so, like, I can use them now. And he's like, oh, I get my surges back now. Didn't he get his surges back for that minute? He was able to fly, like, with the... At the end with that, or am I wrong?
He was able to fly, but he was still bonded to his friend. That was his Skybreaker power.
He'd already broken his oaths by then.
No, not by the fight.
He did.
It's after the fight.
No, that's why Kaladin had to lend him his Stormlight. Because...
Hold on. Let me just make sure that I'm clear here, because I'm pretty confident in what happened. So, Szeth was out of Stormlight because he had been beaten to a pulp for like 10 minutes straight, and it drained all of his Stormlight. And his healing slower and slower and slower. And then he tried to fly with his Stormlight, and he was lashed. Well, he wasn't lashed. He was grabbed by a whip that turned into a stone by a stone ward. And then he couldn't fly, and he started running out of Stormlight. Eventually, he had none left. And if he was to wield Nightblood in that state, he would have died. That was the reason.
Oh my gosh. I'm pretty sure it was the middle of the fight.
What Nightblood learned was how to bond. So he was able to bond to Kaladin and draw Stormlight from Kaladin. But I could be wrong. The comments may light me up on that one. All I'm saying is I was very disappointed by that fight, and I stand by that statement.
I'm going to find it right now.
How are you going to do that?
Here it is. Page 1228.
Well, while he does that, we'll just hum a little tune over here.
No, this is it. So he starts yelling like, I am the law.
Yep. And he swears his fifth ideal.
Now all grew still, honor bearers collapsing to the ground, arms raised to shield their eyes. Therefore, the honor bearers are still alive when he becomes the law.
Okay. And he still has Stormlight.
And then immediately after that,
you can't start assuming. Nope.
Yeah, that's immediately.
You're not going to find it.
No, remember? No. You know what happened. You know why this is hard? Because look, it goes, I am the law, then immediately goes to Adolin.
You know what? You kidding me? That's a good point.
It skipped right back.
And that's like one paragraph of content.
It is. Like, okay, now we're back. Okay, now it goes, oh no, it goes to Renarin before it comes back.
So you have to memorize 8 storylines.
Yeah, and then immediately, next thing it says, like, it's like, I see it now. He's like, you are the wrong spren for me, I'm afraid. And then he breaks his oath. Then he feels a ripping sensation. This is beginning to fade. No. And then he comes off and he says, that is the stupidest thing you've ever done, is get to the final ideal and then break your oaths immediately.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that was wild.
Yeah, that was kind of dumb, huh? But now, like, he's like, okay, Sword Nimi, like, what do you do with those that you eat? Do you eat their souls forever? And he says, no, I don't. And then he's like,
I don't want to kill my friends.
But I don't. And he's like, I'm okay with killing them because that's where they need to be. And so he is no longer a Surge Binder when he's no longer a Radiant when he starts using Nightblood.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so that's why he has to be bonded with Kaladin. But from what I understand, this part just bugged me as well, though, because I'm like, okay, now Nightblood is just randomly learning surges from just talking to the other swords. I'm like,
well, that might be why he's on Roshar. That's one of the things that I thought.
To learn the surges?
To talk to the other Honor Blades. To specifically talk to the Honor Blades.
So we can learn how to do all their powers?
Not so we can learn how to do their powers, so we can learn how to be more, maybe, obedient. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him to Roshar to learn from the Honor Blades.
That would make me feel better about it. But I was still bugged. I was just bugged by it because I'm like, you can't just talk to Superman and like, I talked to Superman, now I'm Superman. You know, like, you know, I don't know. Like, that just,
I see what you're saying.
It's just too much of a stretch because Sanderson has always been the hard magic system. And that felt too soft for me.
Yeah. I totally understand what you're saying. I think from a Nightblood perspective, and I'm a Nightblood fan.
Yes.
I do think it helps me to be like, he's maybe learning to level up a little bit to be a more offensive weapon in the Cosmere without just destroying everything. right? He's supposed to destroy evil, but he destroys everything. So like clearly there was a mistake when he was formed and created, but you kind of hope for better. So maybe that's why he came to Roshar. Like, what other reason would have been brought to Roshar than to learn from these magical blades that are able to draw stormlight? I don't know. It just seems like
it's a good theory. That's actually a really good theory, and I think I'd like it better if it was that direction.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah, so
but it was very convenient. I will give you that.
It was, and it just bugged me. I don't know. But we got to get to the spiritual realm, because this is where like the other half of the story and like little chunks of paragraphs jumping back and forth.
Definitely the confusing half, the meandering half, I'll probably say.
Yes. This is the part I'm going to jump right into it. Let's talk about Shallan and her experience with her mom.
Yep.
We called it, as did all of the internet.
Pretty much
this
everybody.
Is not a theory
everybody
like we
knew
came
this
up
was
with.
Coming.
Everyone knew this was coming, that Shallan's mom is a herald. Specifically
Chala?
Yeah, Chala. I almost said Channy from Dune.
Maybe.
Chala.
That would be a weird crossover episode.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. But I will say, now I can finally tell you this. At the, I went to the World Hopper Ball. Oh. And this part was spoiled.
Oh, really?
Yes, because as you all know, the World Hopper Ball was based on Shallan's wedding.
Yes.
And they had Shallan's mom show up at the ball.
As a herald?
As a herald.
She was a herald?
It was very clear, because Shallan was there for her wedding in the ball, and as she's there like talking or someone's giving a speech, all of a sudden someone with red hair walks up and starts staring at Shallan, and then Shallan's like kind of staring at her, and then she kind of like freaks out, and she's like, and then Wit gets up and yells at her and chases her out of the room and says like you go back to Braze, like, you crazy person, or I can't remember, but like it is super, super clear that like
that would be pretty clear.
Yeah, it was like, well, now we know that's what happened there. But I didn't know how I felt about it, but it made more sense after reading this scene. It made me feel better to realize that she actually was at the wedding. Yeah. And not to just say like they just threw that in there for fun.
No, that actually makes it a lot more relevant for sure.
Yes, because I was like, if they just had thrown that in there for fun, I would have been really a lot more bugged. But
that would have been pretty lame.
I know. I'm like, come on, guys. Yeah. But it was interesting. But it was a cool scene with her reuniting with her mom and like coming to terms of like, okay, yeah, my mom was nuts, and like I have to like forgive her for that and understand that. Yeah. Which was cool. I thought it was a very cool moment.
It was cool. I mean, it was cool that they folded it in, but also that it was like live. It wasn't actually a memory. Like it was actually her there talking to her. That was kind of cool.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. How cool was that?
Like you get to have that moment. You're like, I'm here. This is me. Like we're both living in this memory, but I'm here. That was kind of cool.
And the point of like, you also see that her mother saved her as a child, because she was like going to go kill her.
Kind of.
I
agree with the book in that doesn't quite redeem her.
No. I agree, but I think she hesitated on purpose, like for killing Shallan, because she wanted Shallan to kill her, because she knew that she wouldn't actually become a herald and become back to life. So
yeah, for sure. Hesitating and stopping, I feel like, are different.
That's true.
She could have hesitated because she just felt bad. She was murdering her child.
Well, maybe Sanderson doesn't know.Maybe he accidentally wrote hesitating when he meant to say stopping. Like, he doesn't know what happened. It was their experience. It wasn't his experience.
How's he supposed to know?
Yeah, how's Sanderson supposed to know?
Oh, that's great. No, I think that spiritual realm overall was kind of wild to me. And it was supposed to be the Wild West. But I do feel like we went from the spiritual realm is absolutely insane, Wit's words. And it's like, you never know what's going to happen in there. You could lose track of time. You could get lost. You could be like, who knows what could happen to you in there? And it kind of went from that to like a movie theater real quick. Yeah. All of a sudden it was like, we just kind of just bounce around. We just look at different
We all kind of
stuff.
know what we're doing.
We all kind of know where each other, like, we don't really know where everyone else is at, but we'll see them in a bit. Like, I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah.
Like, it just seemed to me, I was like, isn't this dangerous?
I know.
Is it not dangerous? It just feels like...
Well, I see a little bit of that danger with Gavor, right? Which, were you sold on the Gavor thing?
What do you mean sold?
That, like, it was actually Gavor that had become, like... like old over like 20 years and
Yeah.
the age. Like
I mean, that's what they said. I mean, I believe what they told me.
Does Sanderson really know that though?
You're gonna come back to that.
Come back to that. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought it was wild.
Yeah,
I'm like, dang, that's crazy.
It was wild.
It was unexpected for sure.
I just wasn't sold enough on it.
Because there was just this is what happened, believe me, and we move on, instead of like giving you any hints of the actuality happening.
Yes. Like I would have loved to have like a little bit of like
any sort of flashback.
Yeah, Gav is like a little bit suspicious, or I don't know. And I messaged you about this, and I'm like, there is something wrong with Gav. Like they see him as like oh, that's a weird spren, and I'm like, what?
But that wasn't even part of it.
It wasn't even anything.
The swap happened as they were leaving.
He really was just a weird spren, like
a weird guy.
I know. I just was waiting for them to do something crazy with like Gav from the very beginning. Wasn't who he said he was.
I was also kind of surprised by the whole like he's been in here for 20 years instead of like a few hours, right? Like there's that side of it, where he's able to do that manipulation of time and space and stuff. And then on the other hand, when Dalinar tricks him in the championship, he's like, "Oh man, I'm not ready. Now I got to be ready." And like, now I got all this stuff. I'm like, you have all the time you want, right? Like you kind of just, I don't know. I feel like we're starting to mess with time travel.
Like in the contest of champions, because they're
after
already
the contest of champions, when he bonds with Honor, he's like, "Oh, Dalinar, like I wasn't ready for the fight in the Cosmere yet. I was hoping for more time to prepare."
Oh
and
yeah,
I'm like, you could just prepare. I don't know. It just feels weird. Like now he's all worried about time when he just.
I didn't get that as much because like I think he already is all knowing and can see all possibilities and can
clearly not.
Well, I mean,
not well enough.
I think that he hinted at like it was just such an improbable probability.
I think it was that
Wit talks about this at the end. Wit talks about it at the end. He's like, you can see all probabilities, but for some reason we have a hard time seeing the probability that you could land on heads 1,000 times when you flip a coin, and like that is possible, but like you just discount it because it's so improbable.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, and I thought that was a cool way of explaining it at the end.
I do like Wit. He saves a lot of things for sure.
He does. So usually Sanderson's pretty good at plugging in the gaps of like this. You thought this could happen this way, but I'm just tell you right now that it couldn't.
Okay, I have one thing from that final battle before we move on from it. That like contest of champions.
Okay, actually no, we're not moving on from that. I want to keep going Dalinar and spiritual realm.
Okay, we can keep doing that
because I want to say there were some things in there that also bothered me. Because specifically the moments where Dalinar starts feeling bad about things that he'd done in the past.
Yeah.
The part when he beats the crap out of Elhokar and then he feels bad about it. He's like, I was just taking control. That was not right. I thought that was still a cool moment when you read it in the book. Yeah. Like in book 1, you're like, freak yeah, Dalinar. Like beat the crap out of him. This guy, Elhokar. Like, I know they're trying to spin it and say,
but he was going against him. He was doing things he shouldn't have done just to have power.
It was pretty clear that Elhokar was out of his mind and he needed someone to take it to him.
Absolutely.
And then in this part of the book, it tries to like walk that back. And I was like, come on. Like, that's a part we all loved.
And I hate when you feel like there's something that needs to be said and is obviously should be said and doesn't get said.
Yeah.
Like when he's there and Gavor is watching. That was the time to say something. Like, I did this because the kingdom was falling apart and people were dying.
Yes.
It was very important. I know it looks a little rough, but I didn't hurt him.
Sometimes.
And the people were dying. That's all you have to say.
And sometimes you have to do stuff like that.
I'm just a terrible person. You're just watching me be a terrible person. Look at me. I'm terrible.
Yes.
Like, you just have to say, like, everyone would have thought I feel like in that situation, say something because you had actual thought out motives. It wasn't just a crime of passion. You were in there for a reason. Just tell him what your reason was.
Totally. And you had to do something there. You did. Yeah. And it's not the same. They tried to make it out as the same thing as like you had to make a decision between joining Odium and killing Gav. That's the same thing as you beating up Elhokar. That is not the same thing at all. Like, that is not the same thing at all. Yeah. That's you reprimanding someone to tell them this is what you need to change.
He didn't hurt him. He broke his
ego.
He broke his ego. He broke his plate. Very intentionally be like, you need to realize that I am in charge here, and whether I'm going to do the right thing or not, I'm in charge, but I know I'm going to do the right thing, and this is what has to happen. Yes. It was more of like it was maybe a gray area, but there were still very good reasons for that he could have just said and not felt so bad. I don't know. You're right. I think it's
yes.
weird.
Oh, yes. I completely agree. It was really crazy as they were going through the history of things. also felt very long as they were jumping into the histories of everything.
It did wind long, especially for stories we already know.
Yes. But the craziest part of the history was clearly the capturing of Ado Mishram. The betrayal.
That was crazy.
That was a shocking scene.
Yeah. You feel really bad. You're like, oh man.
Yeah, I know.
This is rough. But you feel like there's the continuing theme through all of these decisions. Like, no one really knows what's happening. They just have pieces of information and they have to make big decisions off of it.
Yes.
Like the Heralds back in the day, like they did this oath pact and they did not have all the information when they made the oath pact. And yet they go back and forth to Braze over and over again and didn't know everything they needed to know. Because with like this new oath pact that they made, it was so much better in every way. If they just had that information earlier, everything could have been different. So they have to make big decisions on no information. And
interesting.
I think the capturing of Mishram was another one. Was like, as far as we know, like this is our best chance at succeeding.
Oh, that was so crazy. Especially because Honor was the one behind that.
Yeah.
And was that what broke Honor?
I don't think so.
What made him leave in the first place? I think that was it.
Was it?
Because he broke an oath.
Broken? Yeah. It was an oath.
It was something. It was either that or like right after that. But it was so crazy to see like where all of this came from and like how this happened.
And that the bondsmith was like went on the suicide mission to take it into the spiritual realm. That was pretty crazy too.
Yeah, that was super crazy.
I mean, I don't know why he didn't just hide it and then. It just seemed weird.
Yeah, and why he didn't like just hide it.
Yeah, just hide it and then leave because he is the bondsmith. But I guess he was like, as long as I'm alive, I'm gonna keep this hidden.
That's a good point.
It seems a little intense.
It was a shocking moment, but like I will say, I was pretty dang close at guessing that the Stormfather was Honor.
You were very close.
Yeah,
not quite.
Not quite 100%, but I would say close enough to that was a pretty dang good theory of mine.
It was because he gave his memories to the Stormfather.
Yep, and I was like, this. Yeah, I was pretty proud of that one, figuring that one out.
You should be.
It was also crazy to see that happen. It was like, oh wow, like Stormfather is Honor and everything, and Honor's whole story was crazy on how he just. Like, he is not a very good Honor. He just betrays his oaths all over the place.
Yeah,
like,
not great.
He's like, I'm going to hang out with Cultivation all the time. Actually, never mind. I'm never leaving this place. No, I'm going to go check out what Odium's doing over here. Like, I blew that place up by accident.
That's why the power was so weak inside of him, because it was fighting against him the whole time.
Yeah, wild.
Cultivation, though, overall, very confusing storyline. I'm going to have to get more information on Cultivation. But, like, I feel like the Cultivation we heard about here and the Cultivation that's, like, been existing in the secret background of books 1 through 4 was kind of lame. I don't know. I was disappointed. I was like, oh, that's it? Like, she just kind of rolled the dice with Taravangian, and that was her big bet, and now she's like, well, crap. That didn't work.
Yeah.
That was my whole plan.
and I'm out of here now.
It just seemed kind of lame.
Yeah, she pieced out. No, her other plan, though, was Dalinar.
Yeah.
And helping to cultivate him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that worked a little bit. But yeah, she's gone. I don't know
and
where
everybody else that she screwed up along the way, because just for fun. I don't know why she was doing that.
Lift has got to be a big part of the story still coming forward.
Lift is a big part of the story, yeah.
Yeah. In the next 5 books, I bet it gets even bigger. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that comes down to the contest of champions.
And that's the last part. Honestly, your prediction was that this was going to happen in like the first few pages of this book.
Yes.
And we waited the entire book for it.
I know. Do you think that was the right approach by Sanderson to wait the whole book? He probably should have wrapped that up.
I think he should have wrapped it up earlier.
Yeah.
And I do think it made it a little bit more disappointing, because it wasn't even like a contest. It was a conversation.
I know. I
they
thought
didn't even fight. They didn't even really fight. He like evades him for a little bit, and then Odium freezes him. Then he's like, it's your choice now. Kill him and win, or commit suicide and lose.
I don't know if that's a hot take, but I actually liked the Contest of Champions.
I did not like it.
You didn't like it at all?
Not even a little.
I thought it was so fascinating, just the whole moral dilemma that he had to go through. It was just absolutely crazy. I just had no idea what I would do in that situation.
I don't know what I would do in that situation, but it's also like, I don't know. When you lead up to Fate of the Universe stuff, it just seems a little bit like you kind of want it to be a little bit more of a emotional, mental, physical struggle, and not just a Odium standing in the top and being like, pick a card, like you choose, you can win, you can lose.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt a little bit like, are you trying? Like, I can't understand this, a moral dilemma, and it's a difficult decision. But is it hard? Like, it's not like taxing on it. It's really just take all the time you need.
Oh, man. Him going...
It felt a little weird.
But he takes the power of honor at that moment, which is pretty cool. And he thinks that...
And that's a big thing for me, too.
You didn't like it?
So, something that I remember distinctly from previous books is that... Maybe actually this book. Earlier in this book, which was like 6 books ago. The Stormfather and Elokar are looking and trying to find the words. Because he wants to take up honor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they make a big deal about the fact that the words are
Gavor, not Elokar.
Sorry. That the words are in Way of Kings.
Yeah.
Right? And they say it that way that you're going to like recognize the words, right? And the words "I understand you" does not make that connection for me in any way.
Interesting.
We've not heard that in any of the Way of Kings passages that I can remember.
Well, in the book's defense, I kind of wonder if
you can't go general concept. It's like they made a big deal of that.
Well, I kind of wonder if he was talking about the words to become like a radiant or a herald or something like that. Because he didn't I don't think he understood that he could become a god.
But he wanted to be immortal, right? So
he wanted to be a herald.
Yeah, he at least wanted to be a herald.
Yeah, but I don't think he understood that he could become.
I didn't see those
honor.
words in there either.
Well, Kaladin made up his own words.
Exactly. Like, that makes it even less of a connection. The words don't even really matter.
I know.
So that was like, what? Those are the words?
That's it? Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like Kaladin has said that at least 6 times to 5 different people.
Then
He's
Dalinar
become honor at least 7 times by now.
I kind of thought that either Adolin or Kaladin was going to become honor by the end. I may have even texted you that at one point, that Adolin... there was 2 theories.
You definitely thought Adolin was going to be honor at one point.
Yeah, and I kind of thought it was going that direction at the end, too.
Would have been cool, because he seemed like a really good honor, because he didn't take oaths because he didn't think that it was good to be bound by oaths. I thought that was kind of a cool take.
Yeah, it was interesting. But I don't know how I thought about him just going into the vision and just chatting, eating bread with what's his face?
It was a little weird.
Yeah,
kind of
cool. A little weird, but like Dalinar the whole time is just like, just tell me what to say.
But this bread is so good.
Well, this bread is so good. I'm like, okay, guys, like, come on. Like, I don't know. It was just taking me out of it.
Yeah,
again.
that was a little bit odd. But so the fact that like these words are accepted is kind of a theme for me, because everyone is swearing the 5th ideal now.
I've started saying it in my day-to-day life. I think it's really funny. Like something cool will happen and someone will have said something really cool. I'm like, these words are accepted.
Nice. I'm sure that goes really well.
It doesn't. No one gets it. So I can only say it to you. I say it to myself
hilarious.
and give myself a little chuckle. And
we'll say it at Dragonsteel and it'll make sense to people.
It's so funny.
But that is, yeah, it seems like it was happening to everybody. And half of those people renounced their oaths right after, which is kind of lame. But the other thing is, for me, like, the words being accepted, I'm trying to follow, like, the path of these ideals, like 1 through 5. I mean, Szeth skipped 1, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, that's interesting. And the fact that there doesn't necessarily need to be an order, because the order for Kaladin, I think, is going to be different than others. Because it ending with, I will protect myself, I feel like a lot of people besides Kaladin would start with that. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't seem like the final ideal for anyone but, like, a Kaladin type of a person. It didn't seem like a crowning ideal. It seemed like
Kaladin's ideal? You didn't like Kaladin's final ideal?
It made sense for his next step. It didn't make sense for, like, the Windrunner 5th ideal being...
I think it's different for each Windrunner.
So it's different for each person, right?
Yeah, it's different. Because you've seen that. Like, Lopin's was different.
Yeah.
Like, he would protect people from himself.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. That was probably the best one.
No, it really was.
I will try not to be so offensive.
I'll stop bugging my cousins.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, like, since they're different for everyone, they can be in a different order for everyone, yet Szeth can still skip a level. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and we never got any resolution with the, this is like...
Not very many things at all.
No, yeah, well, with the Mink.
Oh, yeah. They had an interlude for him.
They did. And then it
was like, come on, make it awesome.
Yeah.
My death can't just be lame like this.
And then something comes out of the water, and it implies that he's going to find a way to live through it.
Well, he survived. He got out of there.
Yeah. But he thought he was going to die because, like, he came up to the edge of a cliff, and then something came out of the water.
And then is that where it ends?
That's kind of where it ended.
Pretty lame.
Yeah. Well, but... I did think that the finish of the book was pretty crazy. The how Odium becomes Retribution.
Yeah.
That's
intense.
That's a cool name, by the way. Like, and a
Retribution.
horrific name. But again, I feel like Sanderson was going back on his own rules. He said so many times that a shard, and they even mentioned it, I feel like it was in this book or a previous book, that taking up another shard does not make you any more powerful than it did before because you were already a god at that point. How can you become more powerful than
if he said that, then they definitely negated that in this because
they totally did.
Wit specifically says that he is almost as powerful as Harmony.
I think he says he's more powerful than Harmony.
I think maybe he was debating whether but he was specifically stating Harmony because Harmony was the most powerful.
I think they say it in this book. They talk about how Honor and like Odium talks about how he didn't take the powers from other people that he destroyed because he didn't want, like, he realized that it wouldn't make him any more powerful. He was just worried that it would change his intent, and he didn't want his intent changed, and so he was just like, I'm not taking any more power.
Interesting. So I'll have to see how that turns out.
Yeah, then Wit says the opposite. I don't know. It kind of was
Wit
interesting.
doesn't know everything. But
Wit would know that. Wit would know that.
Wit does a good job of wrapping up the book.
He does.
I will split.
He ends up in Scadrial.
The biggest missed opportunity of this whole book. Okay, the last conversation, and this is okay. To be fair, this made me laugh, but it's not actually in the book.
Is it a joke from your own self?
Yes, it's a good one too. Okay, the very, very end of the book, Kaladin becomes a herald for the first time. He starts having these conversations in this nice little place. Okay. Where they don't get tortured. And they're a little wary and hesitant of this new guy, Kaladin. So Kaladin's going over, he's chatting with him, and he has this nice, intimate conversation with, do you remember which herald he was talking to? Kalak, right?
Yeah.
You know, just having a nice conversation. And, like, that is his moment to just say something about Kalak's breath. Because they've said this every single book. It's the biggest, like, funniest thing, and, like, he has this nice conversation with him right up next to him. That was the time. That was the time, and that would have been hilarious, and I would have laughed for days. And I was just sad. I'm like, what a missed opportunity. That would have just brought the whole thing home.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Thank you.
That's pretty good. I love it.
I wrote it down. I was like, that is a missed opportunity.
You lose an entire point for not including that.
He forces a lot of humor sometimes, and come on, man. That would have been ideal.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. That is pretty good. I like, so Wit ends up on Scadrial.
Yes. Because
he had
he needs to interview to be a coachman.
Yes. But this is cool because it's the first time we're actually getting a timeline to see where things are connecting.
Like, no way, it's the interview.
You're like, this is what's going on.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's nuts. So we know, that's starting to go on. And we know about, we can't talk about any of that stuff because we don't want to spoil that stuff. But go,
it does connect things.
Go read in Mistborn Era 2. It sounds like this is happening at the same time. So, very interesting.
Sounds similar. Yeah. Not that that's a plot point in any way, but it's interesting. It's fun. They connect.
Yeah, super cool. Super cool to see where those align. And also to see where the Ghost Bloods connect and everything, and like what's
the big other finish that connects
started.
Things is that this is when Zigel takes the Dawnshard from Wit, because Wit's freaking out because now he's like, if Odium realizes I have a Dawnshard, we're in big trouble.
Yep. And then he gets vaporized.
Yeah, that's true.
And then he's able to come back to life because he has a small culture of cells of his on the Scadrial that they've been keeping alive. And his theory is that as long as like any piece of him is still around, he can like rebuild himself over there.
That's wild.
And so
the fact that he's getting his clothes regularly laundered, just in case, he comes back.
I love how he's like regularly laundered. I'm like, do you need to wash them if you're not wearing them? Like,
dude, you just want to have nice fresh clothes. You don't
all
want to be
the time
musty.
I guess so.
He's a weird guy.
He's a weird guy. He's a professional guy.
But the Dawnshard stuff was pretty cool because we don't know much about Dawnshards, if like very much at all. We know there are 4, right?
Yep.
And so like that's a big deal that Witch has had one this whole time. So
yeah, back to the Dawnshard book. I really liked that short story. I thought
it's good. It's really good.
I thought it was really good.
But it was a fun finish. I think it was cool to have kind of Wit wrap things up because he's the most like Cosmere wide informative entity.
Yes. And as always, the conclusions of these books always save the book for me. Like, not always, but like they turn it around. I like forget about some of the things that I didn't like as much. You wouldn't think so because we talked about them all today. But it brought back this book in a way of like, okay, there's some exciting things happening. There's some exciting things to look forward to in the next 5 books. But to be honest, this is a super harsh take, but
Oof.
I was having such a hard time with this book that I'm like, I don't know if I can keep reading the rest of the books.
I did have pauses, for sure.
With the same thought process?
Where I was like, it's just, you just don't get drawn in to the next section, let alone the next.
I was just so bugged by parts of this book that I was starting to not look forward to the next 5 books. I'm like, do I really want to keep invested in this? Like, this is a big time commitment.
Yeah, it is.
And he promises you cool endings and cool finishes, but this book was just not it.
I think it was overhyped. Not necessarily that it's a terrible book. I don't think that.
I don't think he did anything to overhype it himself.
No, but the community hyped the book.
Well, it's because he's good at finishes.
He's very good.
He just didn't on this one. It was just so different. I think that he wrote too many character perspectives.
That we know.
And anyways, did you have anything else you're going to say before I start wrapping into like...
I do want to hear your score. That's what I'm eagerly awaiting.
Yeah. This book is a 7.5 for me.
I thought you were going to say the exact same score as me again, and that was going to look like a copycat.
Yeah. Yeah, this score is a 7.5 for me. He went, again, way too hard on the different perspectives of characters. He should not have done that. I know we want to know what's going on with everyone. You can, I don't know, imply it, maybe not have... The whole thing with Yasna and Taravangian was really cool and everything. Yeah. But like... You could sacrifice without that storyline to focus more on your other characters and get that later. I love Yasna. You didn't need that
story at all.
You didn't need it. Like, it was still shocking and stuff, but I like Yasna's story a lot, too. We could have had her in the later books. Like, you get some whole books on herself, too. I don't feel like her character
was as good in this book, to be completely fair.
It wasn't.
Overall, I just feel like her character kind of just... The power levels went down.
Yeah,
it kind of seemed lame.
It was so interesting, and then there was we started getting new character perspectives with Zigel. That part I had a really hard time with. I had a hard time getting into the characters, and I think again because of the switching, I could never enjoy it. But even that, our favorite characters, Kaladin, they just weren't hitting the same way. Yeah. He wasn't feel the same. Most of the characters didn't feel the same. It just felt like a different book. I don't know. It was just...
I can understand that.
It was just wild. I don't know why it was so different.
And it hurts to rate a Stormlight Archive book in the 7s.
Yes.
But I also had a 7 rating. Mine was a 7.8.
Wow.
Where it could not get into the 8s for me, which is crazy because the other books are high 9s.
Yep, they're all 9s.
Which is incredibly rare.
Yes.
So the fact that this didn't even make it into the 8s, I'm a little bit sad about. But for me, it was... Not just once, but probably 4 or 5 times where I was personally very excited about a specific part because I wanted to read the intensity of it and was let down. A lot of those fights where I was like, you can't, it's too convenient. That just doesn't happen.
Yep.
And especially the final fight for Szeth, he's gone through all of this. We've followed him this entire book only for the final fight to be this. Was those little disappointments just are knocking it down. 0.3 at a time.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And so 7.8 is where I ended up. To say I would definitely keep this on my would recommend list for someone who's read the Stormlight Archive. I wouldn't be the type of person to be like, oh, well, read 1 through 4, but don't bother with 5. It's no, read it. Definitely read it. But don't hype it up too much. You will get a lot of closure about the Stormlight Archive stuff. You'll learn a lot about it. Go into it with that mindset and not, this is the crowning achievement of the Stormlight Archive, because you might be a little disappointed. So
yes,
7.8.
I will also say that Sanderson, one of his strongest abilities in writing books is his character development.
Yes.
And how much you relate.
Consistency.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how much you relate with all these characters. That was extremely weak in this book.
That's true.
And that, I think, was...
Could have been from the switching as well.
I think it was... That's where I'm saying. I think it all comes down to he had too many character perspectives. And actually, I think he may have even said this, at one point. Really? I think there was an interview where... I don't know if I'm quoting someone else who was quoting him. I don't know. And I could be making this up. But I feel like he said that, I think I did too much character switching. And he shouldn't.
Well, there you go. Marty agrees with whoever that was that said that quote.
I do. I don't know. And I think he was also trying to try something cool. I'm what if I wrote an entire book that was only 10 days long? And I'm
I can see the creative license in there for sure.
I think I think he was trying something cool and it didn't work.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely curious to see what you guys think of the book if you've read it. If you haven't read it and you watched this entire spoiler review, I don't know what to think of you. But if you have read it, which you should have, leave us your rating in the comments. Let us know why, what your thoughts are. Maybe leave it with a little bit of a spoiler buffer if there's going to be a lot of spoilers in there. But if you have not already, like the video. If you got this far, you definitely liked the video. So come on, just hit the button. We're really excited to have you guys on this journey. We have a lot of interesting and fun books that are coming up very, very soon. 2025 is going to be full of a lot of exciting stuff that we're excited to announce and talk about and go through on this podcast and channel. So we're excited to have you with us, and we will see you in the next chapter.